My husband faked his death, leaving me with 2 young children and his paralyzed parents. I cried until I had no tears left, threw him the funeral of the century, and announced his death everywhere. Immediately after, I contacted my lawyer to file for a death certificate, update his official records, and transfer all our assets into my name. When my husband returned from overseas with his high school sweetheart in tow, he was dumbfounded. I was getting a facial at a luxury spa in the heart of South Beach when my phone rang with an unknown number. The man's voice on the other end was grave, speaking slowly as if choosing each word carefully to keep me from collapsing on the spot. "Ma'am, are you a relative of Mr. Leo Thompson?" "I'm his wife," I said. "This is Officer Miller with the Coast Guard. We regret to inform you that the yacht Mr. Thompson was on with a tour group experienced an engine explosion off the coast." His voice paused. "The search and rescue operation has concluded. We can confirm there were no survivors." I closed my eyes, the cooling mask still fresh on my skin. 3 years ago, I would have fainted. But now, the corner of my mouth twitched, as if I wanted to laugh. Dead? If my private investigator hadn't sent me a crystal-clear photo 10 minutes earlier, I might have believed it. In the picture, my dead husband was wearing floral swim trunks, lounging on a sun chair at a private beach in the Bahamas. Beside him was Nicole, his sweetheart, her skin pale and lips red, leaning over to rub sunscreen on his back, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. I took a deep breath, digging my nails into my thigh to make my voice tremble like that of a grieving wife. What did you say? Are you sure? My husband was so healthy. Please remain calm, ma'am. We found Mr. Thompson's wallet and personal effects. The scene was catastrophic. The chances of survival were 0. I let out a single, sharp sob, just enough to convince the officer of my pain. Then I hung up, ripped the mask from my face, and stared into the mirror. The reflection wasn't that of a devastated widow, but of a woman with bright eyes, dry lips, and a calmness as cold as well water. My name is Ava. 3 years ago, I hid my wealthy background to marry Leo, full of love and hope. I used my money, my connections, and my family's reputation to lift him from a small-town guy into a well-known business owner. When the company started taking off, Leo turned on me, complaining that all I did was spend his money and stay home like a decoration. Then he brought Nicole into our lives, lecturing me with a sanctimonious tone. "Ava, a successful man needs a woman who can be his partner in business. You're too gentle, too soft." He was right. I was too soft. So soft that he thought he could fake his death, run off with our money, and leave me with our 2 children and his dependent parents. My phone buzzed again. It was my mother-in-law, Sharon. "Ava, the police just called me. Is it true? Is Leo really gone? Oh God, honey, how will I live?" She was wailing, but beneath the sobs, I could hear panic and calculation. Leo was her pillar, her personal ATM. I let out a breath, my voice softening into that of a dutiful daughter-in-law. "Mom, please stay calm. I'm on my way home. We have to give Leo a proper send-off." She paused for a beat, as if trying to figure out my next move. Yes, come home. The house is in chaos." I hung up. A script had already formed in my mind. He wanted to act. I would put on a bigger show. He wanted to be dead. I would make him dead for real, legally dead. I called my assistant, my voice clipped and dry. "Book the largest funeral home in Coral Gables. The service is in 3 days. I want a fleet of limousines, white flowers, silver accents, everything must be perfect. And invite the media. The more, the better." Next, I called my lawyer, Mr. Davis, who had worked with my family for years. "Mr. Davis, I need to file a death certificate, update his Social Security records, and begin the probate process to consolidate the assets. I need it done fast. I want everything finalized by the day of the funeral." Mr. Davis was silent for a second, then asked one profound question. "Ava, are you sure?" I looked at the photo from the PI of Leo smiling under the sun. "I'm sure." 3 days later, a chill seemed to descend upon Miami. Leo's funeral was staged like a major event. A long line of black cars snaked down the street, and wreaths of white flowers covered the entire facade of the funeral home. His memorial portrait was chosen carefully, a photo where he looked bright and kind, as if he had never betrayed anyone. It's true what they say. With the right lighting, you can make a villain look like a saint. I wore a black mourning dress with a white flower pinned to my chest. My makeup was pale, my eyes red-rimmed, my lips colorless. I stood before the casket, bowing my head just as the cameras swept by. I didn't need to cry for real. I just needed people to believe I was. My mother-in-law, Sharon, sat in her wheelchair. My father-in-law, Thomas, who had been bedridden since his stroke, was wheeled in to complete the picture. My 2 children, Ben and Anna, clung to my legs. They didn't fully understand what was happening, only that everyone was wearing sad clothes and saying Daddy had gone far away. I stepped up to the microphone, all eyes on me. I could hear the whispers of relatives, business partners, and those who came more out of curiosity than compassion. I spoke slowly, my voice catching at all the right moments. Leo always told me that life is short, and we must live it with integrity. I couldn't be with him in his final moments. I paused, bowing my head. People began to sniffle. I even heard someone whisper, "Poor Ava." I looked up, my gaze sharpening for just a second, like a woman pushed to the absolute edge. To let Leo rest in peace, and to allow the living to start over, today, in front of all of you, I will finalize the official paperwork declaring his death and updating his public records, as required by law. A gasp rippled through the hall. People looked at each other, some confused, some shocked, some frightened by my resolve. But I didn't care. Mr. Davis was prepared. The file was brought out. Officials from the county records office were present. I was handed the documents. I signed my name, keeping my hand steady. I even carefully double-checked each section, as if handling paperwork for a stranger, not my husband. My mother-in-law stopped crying. She grabbed my arm, her voice urgent. "Ava, now that that's done, what about the assets? Leo must have left a lot." I looked at her, my voice as light as the wind. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll handle everything. As his wife, I won't let you and Dad be left with nothing." She let out a sigh of relief, her eyes lighting up at the thought of money. Only I knew that the inheritance she was waiting for was about to become a trap. That evening, after the funeral ended, I didn't go straight home. I took my mother-in-law to finalize the last of the paperwork. She kept rushing me. "Hurry up, honey, hurry up, before there are complications." When the final stamp came down and the completed document was in my hands, I felt like I was holding the noose Leo had willingly placed around his own neck. I walked out of the county courthouse into a light Miami drizzle. My mother-in-law sat beside me in the car, clutching an urn she didn't know contained nothing but a few of his old belongings I'd chosen to make the performance complete. She looked at me, her voice no longer fearful, only greedy. "Now we go home and talk about the inheritance, right, dear?" I turned to the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. "Yes, we're going home. I'm waiting for that too. It's time to settle the score." In my mind, I pictured Leo leading Nicole back to the country, walking into the house that was once his, only to find the locks changed, the title transferred, and his name erased. He would never understand, because from the moment I first shed a tear in front of his memorial, I was no longer the gentle wife. I was the woman standing in the ashes, ready to rebuild my life with clean hands and a heart that had learned to be as hard as stone. Back at the house, before I could even take off my black heels, my mother-in-law was already wheeling herself into the living room. Her voice was hoarse from crying, but her eyes shone with a strange intensity. "Ava, honey, the paperwork is done. Now, tell me. The house, the cars, the savings accounts, what did Leo leave behind? I'm an old woman, your father is lying right there, and we have 2 little ones. I have to plan for the future." I set my purse down and glanced at my father-in-law, motionless in his bed near the window. Thomas's breathing was labored, his eyes shut, a blood pressure monitor and pill bottles on his nightstand. The scent of liniment mixed with the lingering smell of funeral incense. It was suffocating and bitter. Ben and Anna sat at my feet, occasionally asking, "Mommy, where did Daddy go?" I stroked their hair, swallowing the lump in my throat. As much as Leo deserved this, my children were still just children. They only remembered a father who once lifted them onto his shoulders. I turned to my mother-in-law, my voice as soft as always. "Mom, please be calm. I've had Mr. Davis prepare all the documents according to the law. He'll be here tonight, and we can go over everything clearly. We need to take care of Dad's medical bills and the kids' school tuition." Hearing the phrase, "according to the law," Sharon flinched, then nodded vigorously, as if afraid I'd change my mind. Yes, call the lawyer. Just make sure you take care of me, their grandfather, and the kids." I went to the kitchen to heat a kettle of ginger tea. My hands moved mechanically, but my mind was abuzz with a strange, new clarity. 3 years ago, I loved Leo. I accepted being taken for granted to keep the peace with his family. Now, I was holding this house together with a will of steel, though it was wrapped in a velvet glove. As I poured the water, I remembered all the money I had given Leo, the startup capital for his company, the money for his car, the funds for networking, the cash to cover payroll during tough months. I used to believe that an ambitious man would be grateful. I forgot that some men are only grateful when they're in need. Once they have wings, they see the woman beside them as nothing more than a shadow. My phone vibrated. A text from the private investigator, a short message and a new photo. In it, Leo and Nicole were standing at a resort check-in counter. Leo was smiling, his arm around Nicole's shoulders, looking like a man who had just escaped his old life. Below the picture, the PI wrote, "They're preparing to move again. Looks like they're about to fly." I locked the screen and took a deep breath. He thought he was so clever. But right now, in this house, everything he ever owned was already slipping from his grasp. The door opened. Mr. Davis arrived, his sleeves rolled up, a briefcase tucked under his arm. He greeted me and my mother-in-law with perfect decorum. "Good evening, Sharon." "Hello, Thomas." "Ava." My mother-in-law didn't bother with pleasantries. She pulled him closer as if he were a safe she needed to crack open. "Mr. Davis, please explain it to me clearly. Leo is gone. Ava is his wife, but I'm his mother, and his father is still alive. So, how will it be divided?" Mr. Davis sat down and opened his files, his voice calm, enunciating every word as if afraid someone might misunderstand a single comma. "Sharon, according to the death certificate and the official filings, Leo is legally deceased. Marital assets, without a will, must go through probate and be divided among the heirs at law." My mother-in-law nodded along, thinking she was about to hear the magic number. Mr. Davis glanced at me before continuing. "However, before we discuss division, I must bring up an important matter. Leo had significant financial obligations. He was in debt." It was as if someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on her. Debt? What debt? His company was doing well. I placed a cup of ginger tea in front of her, my voice full of self-reproach. "I didn't know either, Mom." But Mr. Davis had it checked. "I'm afraid Leo might have borrowed money without telling me." Sharon whipped her head toward Mr. Davis, her eyes wide. "Tell me, how much debt?" Mr. Davis pulled out several documents and laid them on the table. Personal loans, promissory notes, and a few co-signed business guarantees. The total comes to about $3.5 million. Sharon's jaw dropped. A sound escaped her lips like a shattering bowl. "Oh my God, $3.5 million? Is he insane? How dare he borrow that much without telling his mother?" I saw her hands tremble. She wasn't crying anymore. She was scared. For people like her, the only thing scarier than losing a son was losing money and having to pay back more. Mr. Davis continued in his steady tone. "To be clear, if you accept a share of the inheritance, you also accept responsibility for settling his debts up to the value of the assets you receive. If you and Thomas wish to inherit, you must also consider this debt." My mother-in-law slammed her hand on the arm of her wheelchair and shrieked, "No, I won't accept it. I'm an old woman. Where would I get $3.5 million to pay that off? Ava, you were his wife. You pay it." I feigned a startled look, but I didn't get angry. I bowed my head, my voice soft but firm, every inch the dutiful daughter-in-law. "Mom, I am his wife. I will take care of you and Dad and the children. I won't abandon you. But Leo's debt must be handled according to the law. I can't just take it all on myself. I have 2 children to think about. And with Dad's medical bills, I'm just one woman. I'm not made of money." She pointed a finger straight at my face, her voice cracking with rage. "You're a smooth talker. You're rich. I know your family has money." I looked at her, my eyes suddenly burning. Not with pain, but with the stark realization of how cheap this familial bond was. When Leo was bringing in money, she would serve me dinner and call me her sweet daughter-in-law. Now that he was dead, she was trying to use me as a shield against his debts. I swallowed hard and said, as if sighing, "Mom, if you believe I'm rich, then you should also believe I'm not foolish enough to do something illegal that would bring shame upon my children. I just want everything to be clear so Leo can rest in peace." Mr. Davis gently pushed a document toward my mother-in-law. His words were like a cold knife. "Sharon, if you are concerned about the debt, you can sign a disclaimer of interest, officially refusing the inheritance. We can arrange a similar process for Thomas under a legal guardianship. When you disclaim your share, you will not receive any part of the estate, nor will you be responsible for any of its obligations." My mother-in-law stared at the paper as if it were a snake. Her lips moved. "If I refuse, I get nothing?" I placed my hand on her shoulder, my voice softening as if I were genuinely comforting her. "Mom, you and Dad are still here, and I will still support you. But this $3.5 million debt? I'm scared creditors will come to the house and demand payment. It would be a shock for you, and it would make Dad's condition worse. If you sign the disclaimer, at least you won't be dragged into it." Sharon looked at me, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Then she looked at her motionless husband, and finally, back at the document. I knew she was weighing her options. She wasn't weighing love, she was weighing profit. After a moment, she snapped, "Give me a pen. I'll sign it. I'll sign it and be done with it. He's dead, and he's still trying to drag his mother down with him?" Mr. Davis didn't rush. He read every line to her. She signed with a trembling hand, the ink smudging slightly. Then she pressed her thumb onto the ink pad and left a bright red print on the paper. I looked at that thumbprint, my heart cold but also light. The legal tie between Leo and his own mother had just been severed by her own hand. Mr. Davis gathered his files and stood up. "Ava, we still have more to do for your portion. I'll accompany you tomorrow to the necessary offices. Remember to keep this document safe." I walked him to the door. Before he left, he leaned in and whispered, "You did the right thing. But from now on, you have to be careful. A man who fakes his death will usually come back when he sees his money in someone else's hands." I nodded, my eyes fixed on the dark yard, where the wind rustled through the trees as if someone were out there, listening. When I turned back inside, my mother-in-law had changed her clothes and was sitting up straighter, like someone who had just escaped a disaster. She looked at me, her tone less harsh but still devoid of warmth. "Ava, you take care of that debt tomorrow, you hear? Don't let those people come here and cause a scene." I looked at her, then at my 2 children sleeping on the couch. I answered softly, "Yes, Mom, I'll take care of it." But in my heart, another sentence rang out, clearer than any other. "Leo, your own mother just signed a paper disowning you. When you come back, you'll see just how alone you really are. And that is only the beginning." That night, long after everyone was asleep, I sat alone in the living room. Only a small lamp was on, just enough to illuminate the stack of papers Mr. Davis had left on the table. The numbers and legal clauses lay dormant, but in my mind, everything was in motion. I thought of Leo, of his confident swagger when he was still here, always puffing out his chest and telling me, "With me here, you don't have to worry about a thing." I thought of the first time he asked me to sign a power of attorney, saying it was for business convenience, and how I'd signed without a second thought. And then I thought of the investigator's photo of him sunbathing with Nicole, smiling like a man free of all responsibility. I stood up and went into my children's bedroom. Ben was sleeping on his side, his hand still clutching an old teddy bear. Anna lay next to him, her lips occasionally murmuring, "Daddy." I pulled the blanket over them, a quiet ache in my chest. Whatever kind of man Leo was, in their eyes, he was still their father. And for that very reason, I could not afford to be soft. The next morning, I woke up early to make oatmeal for my father-in-law, prepare his medication, and call the home nurse to change his dressings. My mother-in-law sat in a corner, her face weary but her eyes less tense than the night before. She had signed the papers, and now her only thought was how to live out her days in peace. As soon as the nurse left, I changed my clothes to go out. My mother-in-law watched me, her voice wary. "Where are you going so early?" "I'm going to the bank with Mr. Davis. There are a few more things we need to sort out, to avoid any trouble later." She didn't ask any more questions, probably afraid that asking too much would uncover something unpleasant. I met Mr. Davis out front. As soon as the car started moving, he got straight to the point. "Ava, I've been thinking since yesterday. You've handled every step perfectly, but I have to be blunt. Knowing Leo's personality, he won't give up easily." I stared out the window at the morning traffic, everyone busy with their own lives. "I know, I'm waiting for him to come back." Mr. Davis glanced at me, slightly surprised. "You're waiting?" I gave a humorless smile. "Yes. A man who fakes his death to run with the money has two options. Either he runs forever, or he comes back when he thinks it's safe. I believe Leo is the second type." He nodded, saying no more. We arrived at the bank, where I met with the private client manager and signed document after document. The accounts in Leo's name were frozen based on the death certificate. Our joint assets were transferred to a transitional estate account. Everything went smoothly, exactly according to procedure. As we walked out, Mr. Davis said quietly, "This step effectively cuts off his access to any money in this country." "Money is the first thing he'll look for when he comes back," I replied. Just then, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered it. The voice on the other end was hoarse and low, as if trying to suppress something. "Ava, it's me." Just 2 words, but they sent a chill down my spine. I stopped walking. Mr. Davis stopped with me. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice steady. There was a second of silence, followed by a soft, familiar, and utterly detestable laugh. "Don't play dumb. I know you're smart, and I know what you've been doing." I gripped the phone tighter. "If you don't have legitimate business with me, I'm hanging up." "Ava," Leo's voice dropped, "I never thought you'd go this far. You really had me declared dead?" I closed my eyes for a beat, then answered slowly, enunciating each word. "You are dead, Leo. At least on paper." He exhaled sharply on the other end. "You think you've won? You think erasing my name solves everything? I'm alive, and I can come back any time." I laughed, a silent, bitter laugh. "Come back how? Your social security records are updated, your bank accounts are frozen, and your name has been removed from the company's board. In what capacity would you return?" Leo was quiet. I could hear the sound of waves. He must have been near the ocean. "Ava, no matter what, I'm still the father of our children." He switched tactics, his tone softening. "You can't be this heartless." I glanced at Mr. Davis. He stood motionless, his eyes vigilant. I turned back to the phone, my voice no longer cold but deep, like a mother's. "Since you brought up the children, you should remember that you were the one who abandoned them. You faked your death and left them calling for a father who would never answer. I was just finishing what you started." "I need money," Leo said bluntly, his voice suddenly sharp. "Just give me a payout, and I'll disappear. I won't come back to bother you again." I laughed out loud for the first time since the call began. "You still don't get it. It's not that I won't give you money. It's that I no longer have any obligation to." "Ava, don't push me." His voice turned threatening. "If I come back and make a scene, do you really think you'll have any peace?" I stared ahead at the flowing traffic. "Come back then. I'm waiting." With that, I hung up. My hand wasn't shaking, but a wire inside me had been pulled taut. Mr. Davis looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "So," he called, "yes, and he's coming back." We didn't speak again on the way home, each lost in our own thoughts. When I arrived, I saw my mother-in-law talking on the phone with someone, her voice hushed and furtive. When she saw me walk in, she jumped and hung up immediately. "Oh, you're back," she said with a forced smile. I looked at her, my gaze neither accusatory nor warm. "Yes. Who were you talking to, Mom?" "Oh, just some relatives from back home, checking in." She waved her hand, avoiding my eyes. I didn't expose her lie, but I knew the news was starting to leak. A man like Leo, even when legally dead, still had ways to connect with his family. And my mother-in-law, who had just disclaimed her own son to avoid his debt, hadn't necessarily severed all ties. That evening, as I was serving dinner, my mother-in-law spoke up suddenly, her tone probing. "Ava, what if Leo were still alive? What would you do?" My hand paused. I set a bowl down and turned to face her. "Why do you ask, Mom?" She gave a weak smile. "I'm just saying, what if? He's your husband, the father of those kids." I sat down across from her and spoke slowly, but firmly. "If Leo is alive, then things must be handled even more strictly by the law. You've already signed the papers, and I've completed my part. No one can just come back as if nothing happened." My mother-in-law looked at me, her eyes a mixture of fear and anger, but she said nothing more. Perhaps she finally realized the daughter-in-law sitting before her was no longer the meek Ava of the past. Later that night, I received another text from the PI. "Subject has booked a flight back to the U.S. Expected arrival within a week." I put my phone down and leaned back in my chair. There was no panic left in me, only a clear, cold certainty. The play was about to enter its next act. "Leo, you chose to fake your death to escape. Now, I will let you live, but you will live with the consequences of your actions." 3 days after that phone call, small but distinct movements began to ripple through the house. It wasn't the sound of a stranger's footsteps, but the change in my mother-in-law's eyes. She no longer looked at me directly. She would avoid my gaze, sigh frequently, and take her phone to a corner of the yard to whisper. Once, while I was bringing my father-in-law his oatmeal, I heard her gasp and quickly end a call, her face pale as if caught doing something wrong. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. With someone like my mother-in-law, secrecy meant only one thing. She was clinging to hope, and her only hope right now could be Leo. That afternoon, I picked up the kids from school. On the way home, Ben suddenly asked, "Mommy, is Daddy really dead?" I pulled the car over and turned to look at him. I didn't evade the question. Daddy isn't living at home anymore, but no matter where he is, Mommy will always be here with you. Ben fell silent, then nodded. Anna just squeezed my hand tighter. I understood that for children, the answer isn't as important as the feeling of security, and that was something I could give them. That evening, as I was cleaning the kitchen, my mother-in-law called me into the living room. She was already in her wheelchair, her hands on her knees, her expression unusually serious. "Ava, I need to talk to you. Please don't be angry." I pulled up a chair to face her. "Go ahead, Mom." She licked her lips, choosing her words carefully. "Someone called me yesterday, an old friend of Leo's. They said they had news." I looked directly at her. My heart didn't beat any faster. It just grew a little colder. "What news?" She looked down. "They said Leo might not be dead." The air in the room seemed to freeze. I could hear the steady rhythm of my father-in-law's ventilator in the background. I didn't react immediately. I let the silence stretch long enough to make her anxious. "Ava, if he really is alive..." I cut her off. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. "If Leo is alive, then things have to be even more transparent. You already signed the disclaimer. I have completed all the legal procedures. No one can just come back and take back what's been settled." She looked up, a flash of anger in her eyes. "What are you saying? He's my son, your husband. If he comes back, this is still his house." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "Mom, Leo faked his own death. He chose to leave. The law doesn't operate on feelings. If he returns, he will have to explain everything. I won't stop him, but I won't cover for him either." She trembled, her hands gripping the arms of her wheelchair. You're cruel. Why don't you think about the children?" That question felt like a needle prick, but I wouldn't let myself break. It's precisely because I'm thinking of the children that I'm doing this. I can't let them grow up in a family where adults do whatever they want, shirking responsibility only to return and demand their rights. My mother-in-law stared at me for a long time. In her eyes, I could see a clear conflict. On one side was money and security. On the other was the son she had once considered her everything. She wanted both. But life wouldn't give her that. That night, I received another text from the PI. Leo had returned to the country, using unofficial channels. Someone had picked him up. I locked my phone and stood silently by the window. The wind made the curtains sway gently. I wasn't scared. I was calculating. The next day, just as I'd predicted, Leo didn't come home right away. He was smart enough to know that showing up now would be walking straight into the fire. Instead, he tried a different approach. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Nicole was standing there. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. She was thinner, her makeup was subtle, but her eyes were still sharp. She bowed her head low. "Ava, I'm so sorry to come unannounced, but I really have no other choice." I blocked the doorway, not inviting her in. "Who are you looking for?" Nicole bit her lip. "I'm looking for you. I know what Leo did was wrong, but we're in a very difficult situation. He just wants to see you, to talk." I looked her straight in the eye, my voice cold. "If he wants to see me, he can come himself like a man, not send someone else." Nicole's eyes welled up with tears. "Ava, please. Leo is the father of your children. He can't live like a fugitive forever. Just help him this one time." I gave a faint smile. "Do you have any idea how much my children cried when he left 3 years ago? When my mother-in-law was collapsing and my father-in-law was paralyzed? Where were you?" Nicole didn't answer. She hung her head, her shoulders shaking. I just love him. And I said slowly, have to live." I closed the door in her face, my hand steady on the lock. That afternoon, my mother-in-law flew into a rage. She slammed her hand on the table and yelled, "Ava, did you just send someone away? That was Leo's friend." I looked at her, my eyes unflinching. "Yes. I don't entertain strangers." "Strangers?" she scoffed. "She came on Leo's behalf." "No," I replied. "There is no Leo's behalf in this house anymore." She froze. It was probably at that moment she truly understood that her daughter-in-law had completely severed her son's easy path back. That night, while I was putting the children to bed, my phone rang again. "It was him," I answered. "Ava." Leo's voice was hoarse and tense. "You're too cruel. You even turned Nicole away." "She came on her own," I said. "I didn't invite her." "What do you want?" he snarled. "Do you want me to really die?" I paused for a beat before answering. "You're already dead, Leo. You chose that yourself." The line went silent. Then he let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Fine. You're forcing my hand. Then I'll come back. I'll stand right at the front door, in front of Mom, in front of the kids, and we'll see how tough you can be." I closed my eyes and spoke slowly and clearly. "Come back then. I'm waiting." I hung up and sat on the edge of the kids' bed. Anna was sound asleep, but Ben was still restless. I stroked his back and whispered, "Go to sleep, sweetie. Mommy's here." Outside, I knew a great wave was coming. Leo was about to reveal himself. My mother-in-law would have to choose a side. And I, the woman who once cried as she buried her husband, was now preparing to face a living husband who no longer had a place in this world. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I knew something would happen today. The feeling wasn't fear, but the cold, sharp clarity of someone who is prepared. I made oatmeal for my father-in-law, fed the children, and drove them to school just like any other day. I didn't want them to sense the instability at home. On the way, Anna wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered, "Mommy, I dreamed about Daddy last night." My hand faltered on the steering wheel for a second, but my voice remained steady. "What was Daddy doing in your dream?" "He was standing outside the door, but he couldn't come in." My heart clenched. Children are far more perceptive than adults realize. I gently kissed her forehead. "It's okay, honey. You just focus on school. Mommy is always here." After dropping them off, I returned home. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw an unfamiliar car parked a short distance away. It wasn't fancy, but it was parked discreetly. I knew immediately Leo was nearby. Inside, my mother-in-law was already in the living room. She wasn't watching TV or holding her phone. She was just staring intently at the front door. Seeing me, she startled. "Oh, you're back." She hesitated. Then, as if she couldn't bear it any longer, blurted out, "Ava, Leo," he called me. I set my purse down and sat across from her. "What did he say?" She looked down, wringing her hands. "He said he's coming home. He asked me to convince you to to clear the way for him. I looked at her for a long time, not with anger or blame, but with a desire to understand. "And what did you tell me to do?" She looked up, her eyes filled with a genuine torment. I don't know anymore. He's my son, but I'm also scared." I nodded. "You have every right to be scared." "What do you mean?" she asked, startled. "Leo faked his death. If he comes back now, he'll be facing not just his family, but the law. If you try to protect him, you'll be the first one implicated as an accomplice." My mother-in-law trembled. She knew I wasn't threatening her. I was stating a fact. Just then, the doorbell rang. Not an urgent, repeated ringing, but a single, slow, deliberate chime, as if the person outside knew someone was waiting. My mother-in-law looked at me, her eyes wide. Is that him?" "Stay here, Mom." I stood up. "I'll get it." I walked to the door, my heart beating steadily. When I opened it, Leo was standing there. It had only been 3 years, but he was much thinner. His once full face was now gaunt, his eyes shadowed with dark circles. He was no longer wearing the expensive clothes I used to buy him, but a simple, wrinkled shirt. But his gaze was the same, the gaze of a man used to giving orders. "Ava," he said, his voice hoarse, "I'm home." I looked him up and down, then said very softly, "You have no right to be at this gate." He froze. "What did you say?" "You're legally dead. The dead don't have the right to come home." He let out a strained laugh. "You're taking this too far. I'm here to see my mother, to see my children. We can discuss our issues behind closed doors." I shook my head. "If you step into this house now, you'll be incriminating yourself. You know that." He stared into my eyes, his voice turning sharp. "Are you trying to back me into a corner?" I looked right back at him. "You backed yourself into a corner, Leo. The moment you stepped on that yacht." From inside the house came the sound of wheelchair wheels. My mother-in-law had come out onto the porch. When she saw Leo, she burst into tears. "Leo, you're really alive?" Leo's expression softened instantly. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm late coming home." She wheeled herself closer, weeping as she lightly slapped his arm. "You scared me to death. Where have you been for 3 years without a word?" I stood between them, feeling like I was watching a familiar play, only this time I was no longer a bystander. "Mom," I said, my voice cutting through the drama, "go back inside. This won't be solved with tears." Leo spun toward me. "Stay out of this, Ava. This is between my mother and me." I gave a bitter smile. "No, this involves all of us, and it's best we make it clear right here, in front of the gate, in front of the neighbors, so no one can accuse me of hiding anything later." Leo's face turned pale. He understood my meaning. If I made a scene, he would have no way out. He lowered his voice, almost pleading. "Ava, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. I never expected things to turn out like this." "Whether you expected it or not is irrelevant," I replied. "What matters is what you did." He looked from his mother to me. "I just want to come inside, just for a little while." I shook my head. "No. This house is currently in my name. You have no right to enter." That sentence was like a knife. Leo's eyes widened. "How dare you say that? I'm stating a fact under the law." He was silent for a long time, then he suddenly turned to his mother. "Mom, you tell her. Let me in the house." My mother-in-law looked at me, then at her son. She was crying, but she didn't move. "Leo, I can't." Her words stunned him. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Sharon looked down, her voice trembling. "I already signed the papers. I'm scared, son. I can't go through any more trouble." In that moment, I saw something collapse in Leo's eyes. It wasn't because of me. It was because the one person he thought would always be on his side had chosen her own safety. He turned back to me, his gaze shifting from anger to pure hatred. "You win, Ava, but you remember this. I'm still alive. I won't let this go." I looked at him calmly. "You're alive, but you have nothing left." I closed the gate, not with a slam, but with a soft, quiet click that was loud enough to separate 2 worlds. Outside, Leo stood frozen. Inside, my mother-in-law sobbed. I leaned my back against the cool metal of the gate and closed my eyes for a second. The first confrontation was over, and I knew Leo wouldn't stop here. A man like him, when cornered, would do anything to fight his way out. But I also knew that every move he made would only pull him deeper into the hole he had dug for himself. That night, no one in the house could sleep. My mother-in-law sat silently in the living room for hours, no longer crying out loud, just occasionally wiping her eyes. My father-in-law's breathing seemed heavier than usual. I lay between my two children, listening to their steady breaths, but my own heart was restless. I knew the gate I'd closed that afternoon hadn't just blocked Leo from entering the house, it had officially pushed him down a different path, the path of a desperate man. Around midnight, my phone vibrated. It was Mr. Davis. "Ava." His voice was grave. "I just received word. Leo has started looking for a lawyer." I let out a soft breath. "What is he planning to do?" "Most likely file a complaint alleging that you concealed the fact that he was alive and filed fraudulent paperwork. To put it bluntly, he's trying to flip the narrative." I stared at the ceiling, my voice surprisingly calm. "I figured as much. Don't worry, I'm prepared." Mr. Davis was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Are you scared?" "Yes," I answered honestly. "But I'm not panicking." After hanging up, I turned to look at my children. Ben shifted in his sleep, murmuring, "Daddy." I held him tighter. I couldn't let this fight drag them into the mud. The next morning, the first thing I saw when I woke up were messages in the parents' group chat for Ben's class. Some were subtle, others direct. "Is it true that Ava's husband isn't really dead?" Someone even sent a link to a small gossip site with a shocking headline: "Man fakes death at sea. Wife seizes assets in his absence." I read it without flinching. I knew Leo would do this, attack my reputation, use public opinion to pressure me into giving in. I took the kids to school as usual. At the school gate, another parent pulled me aside. "Ava, I don't know if that stuff online is true, but please take care of yourself." I smiled and thanked her, but I knew that until the story was settled, people would believe whatever they saw first. When I got home, my mother-in-law was waiting, her expression anxious. "Ava, some people came by this morning asking questions. They said they were reporters." I nodded. "Don't say anything to them. If anyone asks, just say you don't know and that all matters are being handled by our lawyer." She grabbed my hand, which was trembling. "Are you going to be okay?" I looked at her and said slowly, "If I was scared, I would have opened the gate yesterday." She bowed her head. I knew in that moment she understood I had no path of retreat. That afternoon, Nicole called me. I answered. "Ava," her voice was strained, "Leo is not doing well. He said if you won't talk to him, he'll take this all the way." I didn't beat around the bush. "Tell him I'm not hiding. I just refuse to negotiate in the shadows." Nicole sobbed. "What do you want?" "I want the truth. And I want everything done by the book." She was silent, then whispered, "He said he's going to sue you." "I'm waiting." Later that day, Mr. Davis came to the house with a stack of papers. "Ava, this is an official request for a meeting with Family Services. It's not a summons, just a verification step. It's standard procedure." I took it and read every line carefully. "Will you come with me?" "Of course." Before we left, I instructed my mother-in-law, "Stay home and lock the gate. Don't open it for anyone." She nodded frantically. The meeting took place in a small office. I sat with my back straight and answered every question. I explained the call from the Coast Guard, the paperwork, and every step I took based on legal advice. I detailed how Leo had left voluntarily and had not made contact for 3 years. When the officer asked, "Did you know your husband was still alive?" I answered immediately, "No." If I had known, I would not have initiated those proceedings. That answer was the truth. I knew he had faked his death, but I had no legal proof at the time I filed the paperwork. Everything I did was based on official documents. At the end of the meeting, the officer nodded. "You can go home for now. We will need to verify Mr. Thompson's side of the story, but at present, we have no grounds to believe you acted improperly." As we left, Mr. Davis let out a sigh of relief. "You've weathered the first storm." Before I could reply, his phone rang. He listened, and his expression changed dramatically. "Ava, Leo just filed a petition for visitation rights, citing his parental authority." My heart seized. This was the one blow I feared most. How do we handle it? I was prepared for this. Given his history of faking his death, abandoning his children, and the current legal dispute, his chances of being granted immediate access are very low. But it's going to be exhausting. I nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. That night, I talked to my children. I sat down at their level. Ben, Anna. Soon some people might ask you questions about Daddy. Just tell them what you know. You don't need to be afraid. Ben looked at me with a maturity beyond his years. Mommy, did Daddy make you sad? I choked up for a moment, then told the truth. Yes, he did, but Mommy is strong now. Anna wrapped her arms around my neck. I don't need Daddy, I need you. I hugged them both, a tear finally falling after so many days. Late that night, I received a text from Leo. Just one line. How long do you think you can keep this up? I didn't reply. I put my phone down and looked out the window. The wind was blowing harder, carrying the feeling of an approaching storm. But I also knew that the fiercer the storm, the clearer the sky afterward. Leo was playing his last cards, and every move he made was being carefully recorded. From the day Leo officially reappeared, the atmosphere in our home was stretched taut like an invisible wire. No one said it, but we all knew the storm was just beginning. That morning, just as I finished preparing my father-in-law's breakfast, my mother-in-law spoke up, her voice low and tired. Ava, I couldn't sleep last night. I set the bowl down and turned to her. Are you worried about Leo? She nodded, her eyes red. He's been texting me nonstop. He says he was wrong. He says he just wants to come home, to see his children. I was silent for a moment. I couldn't forbid her from loving her son, but I also couldn't allow that love to shatter all boundaries. Mom, I said slowly, he can say many beautiful things. But what matters is what he did, and what the consequences are. She sighed, her trembling hands resting on her knees. I know, but he's my son. I nodded. I understand. But I am also Ben and Anna's mother. She looked at me, and this time her gaze held no blame, only exhaustion and helplessness. Perhaps she was finally feeling the price of indulging a son who had never grown up. That afternoon, Mr. Davis called. Ava, I have an update. Leo is filing petitions everywhere complaining about you, demanding access to the children, but I also found something very interesting. I stood on the balcony, looking down at the yard. What is it? During the time he was legally dead, Leo's name appeared on several financial transactions overseas. They aren't large, but they're enough to prove he wasn't missing, as he now claims. My heart beat a little faster. So you're saying? I'm saying that if we can prove he faked his death to evade responsibilities and conceal assets, his legal standing will be severely weakened. We might even have grounds for a countersuit. I closed my eyes. A moment later, I said, help me gather all the evidence. I don't want to attack, but if he's going to drag me through the mud, I won't just stand here. That evening, as I was picking up the kids, a neighbor rushed over. Ava, there's a man standing at your gate. It's your husband. I stopped. My heart didn't race, but my hands turned cold. I ushered the children inside, asked my mother-in-law to watch them, and walked out. Leo was at the gate. He didn't have the defiant look from before. He wore an old button-down shirt, his hair was combed neatly, and his eyes were trying to look gentle. Ava, he said quietly, I'm not here to make trouble. I just want to talk. I stood a few feet from the gate, keeping my distance. What do you want to talk about? I want to see the kids, his voice trembled, just for a little while. I looked at him for a long time. I saw genuine longing in his eyes, but I also saw calculation. No, I answered firmly. Not right now. He was taken aback. Can you be that heartless? My voice remained steady. No, I'm being protective. He changed tactics, his voice dropping into a tone of self-pity. I've lived like a fugitive for 3 years. I regret it. Please, give me a chance to be a father. I looked him straight in the eye. You gave up that right when you chose to fake your death. Leo's hands clenched into fists. You think you can keep me away forever? I'll use the law. Go ahead, I replied. I'm not stopping you. A long silence followed. Then he suddenly lowered his voice. Ava, my mother is very frail. Are you going to let her live without being able to see her son? That remark hit a nerve, But I didn't back down. What your mother needs is peace, not more shocks. He looked at me, his eyes a mix of anger and helplessness. You've changed. I nodded. Yes. Because I've woken up. He gave a bitter laugh. Fine. If you won't open the door, I'll find another way to open it. With that, he turned and walked away. That evening, just as I'd expected, social media was buzzing again. Someone had taken a photo of Leo standing outside our gate, accompanied by a sympathetic caption, "Father blocked from seeing his own children by heartless wife." My mother-in-law saw it and cried, "Ava, what people are saying? How can you bear it?" I sat beside her. "Mom, I can bear it. Because if I soften today, tomorrow I'll have nothing left to protect my children with." That night, I received the official notice for a mediation session regarding Leo's petition for visitation rights. I read it and folded it calmly. The battle had moved to a new front, no longer about who was right or wrong within the family, but about the legal line between responsibility and consequence. I knew that in the next chapter, I would have to lay everything bare, not just for the law, but for my own children, so they would understand why their mother had to be so strong. The night before the mediation, I barely slept. It wasn't because of fear, but because the faces of my two children kept flashing in my mind. Ben was old enough to ask questions. Anna was younger, but she was incredibly sensitive. I knew that no matter the outcome, the next day would leave a scar on their memories. Early in the morning, I made oatmeal for my father-in-law and prepared breakfast for the kids. My mother-in-law sat at the table, holding a teacup she wasn't drinking from, her eyes fixed on the door. "Ava," she called softly, "do you need me to come with you today?" I shook my head. "You stay here with the children, Mom. I can handle this." She nodded, then suddenly took my hand. "No matter what, I'm on your side and the children's side." Her hand was trembling, but her grip was firm. For the first time in years, I felt truly supported by my mother-in-law, not out of obligation, but because she had finally seen the truth. Before I left, Ben tugged on my shirt. "Where are you going, Mommy?" I knelt to look him in the eye. "Mommy is going to talk to Daddy." Anna ran over and hugged my leg. "Is Daddy coming home?" I swallowed hard. "Not yet, sweetie." Ben was quiet for a moment, then said with a maturity beyond his years, "Mommy, you do what you think is right. Me and Anna will listen to you." My heart ached. Sometimes children grow up so fast it makes a mother both proud and heartbroken. The mediation room was small, with fluorescent lights and neatly arranged furniture. Leo was already there. He looked at me, his eyes a mixture of anxiety and confidence. "Ava," he stood up, his voice soft. "You're here." I nodded without replying. Mr. Davis sat beside me. The mediator began by explaining the process and invited Leo to speak first. He stood up, his voice trembling as he spoke of how much he missed his children, of his past mistakes, and of his desire to make amends. He was very convincing, eloquent enough to make any outsider feel sorry for him. "I'm not asking for anything more than the right to be a father," he concluded, his eyes red. The mediator turned to me. "Ma'am, do you have a response?" I took a deep breath and stood. "I do not deny that he is the biological father of my children," I began slowly. "But the right to be a father is not just about blood, it's about responsibility." I recounted everything. The faked death, abandoning his elderly parents and two young children, and the 3 years of complete silence. I didn't raise my voice or cry. I just stated the facts. Leo grew agitated and cut in. "I had my reasons." I looked him straight in the eye. "Did you have a reason to abandon your children for 3 years?" The room fell silent. Mr. Davis presented the evidence, the overseas transactions, the text messages, the timeline. The mediator frowned, taking copious notes. "Currently," I continued, "my children are psychologically stable. To allow him sudden access would be a shock. I propose that if visitation is considered, it must be on a probationary basis and professionally supervised." Leo's face paled. "You want to control my life forever?" "No," I replied. "I want to protect my children." After nearly 2 hours, the mediation was paused. No conclusion was reached, but it was clear Leo's position was weak. As we left the room, he blocked my path. "Ava, you won. What more do you want?" I looked at him, my voice weary. I want you to stop hurting our children. He gave a bitter smile. You think you're so noble? I didn't answer. I knew that for him, winning and losing would always be more important than right and wrong. That evening, I picked up the kids. Ben could read the outcome on my face. Are you tired, Mommy? A little, honey. That night, I explained everything to them in the simplest terms possible. I didn't sugarcoat it, nor did I villainize him. I wanted them to understand that adults make mistakes, and some decisions have a price. Late that night, I received a text from Leo. I'm not giving up. I looked at the screen for a long time, then turned off my phone. I knew the hardest part was still ahead, but I also knew I had overcome my greatest fear. After the mediation, I thought things might quiet down, but I was wrong. When a man accustomed to running is backed into a corner, he will choose to burn everything down to save himself. 3 days later, I was in a virtual meeting with a client when my mother-in-law's phone started ringing off the hook. She answered, and not 10 seconds later, her face went white. Her hand trembled so much she dropped the phone. Ava, they're here! I ended my meeting and shot up from my desk. Who's here? Child Protective Services. And the police. Her voice was frantic. They said someone filed a complaint against you for child abuse. My ears rang, but in a single breath, I understood. Leo had made his move. By the time I got home, there were several people waiting at the gate. A female officer stepped forward, her tone polite but firm. Are you Ava Thompson? We've received a report alleging that you are obstructing paternal rights and may be psychologically manipulating your children. My mother-in-law clung to my sleeve. That's not true. My daughter-in-law has raised these children since they were babies. She's never even yelled at them. I gently removed her hand and looked at the officer. I am happy to cooperate. Please, come in. Ben and Anna were sitting on the sofa, their eyes wide. I sat down next to them and took their hands. Who are they, Mommy? Anna whispered. They're just here to ask some questions, sweetie. The officer knelt and spoke to Ben first. Her questions were gentle and carefully worded, never leading. Are you scared of your mommy? Does your mommy stop you from seeing your daddy? Ben looked at me, then back at the officer. Mommy doesn't stop me. She just said I can see him when I feel ready. The officer took notes, then turned to Anna, asking a few simple questions. My daughter shook her head repeatedly when asked if she was ever hit or yelled at. The visit lasted nearly 2 hours. Before leaving, the officer told me, At this time, we see no signs of abuse, but you should be prepared for the other party to continue filing complaints. I nodded. I understand. When the gate closed, my mother-in-law collapsed onto a chair, tears streaming down her face. How could he be so cruel, Ava, to use his own children to hurt you? I sat beside her. Mom, I was expecting this. That night, I called Mr. Davis. He's starting to play dirty. His voice grew heavy. I just got word, too. He's filing complaints with multiple agencies. But don't worry, Ava. The more he does this, the worse his own case looks. I was silent for a few seconds. I don't want the children dragged into this. Then you have to be decisive, Mr. Davis said bluntly. Stop playing defense. The next morning, I got a call from Leo. This time, there was no pretense of kindness. See? His voice was full of challenge. I told you I wouldn't give up. You're hurting your children, I replied, my voice turning to ice. I'm just taking back what's mine, he scoffed. If you were smart, you'd sit down and negotiate. Negotiate what? Give me custody of one of the kids, or at least split the assets with me. Otherwise, I have plenty of other ways to do this. I gripped the phone. Are you threatening me? No. His voice dropped low. I'm reminding you that I'm their father. I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from a surge of pure rage. That night, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at 2 files Mr. Davis had prepared. One contained everything I had endured. The other contained evidence that could leave Leo with no way out. I remembered my lawyer's words. With some people, the more you concede, the more they take. Late that night, I went out to the living room. My mother-in-law was still awake, knitting a sweater for Anna, her hands trembling. Mom, I said softly. She looked up. You're still awake? Mom, if I escalate things, will you blame me? She looked at me for a long time, then set down her knitting. I used to blame you for being too tough. But now, I only regret that I failed to teach him how to be a decent man. A tear fell before I could stop it. I don't want the kids growing up in the middle of a tug of war. I know, she took my hand. You do what you have to do. I can handle it. The next morning, I took the offensive. I filed a petition with the family court to formally terminate Leo's parental rights based on abandonment and fraud. At the same time, I requested an independent psychological evaluation for the children. When Leo received the notice, he called me frantically. "Ava, are you trying to destroy me?" I answered him only once. "You destroyed yourself 3 years ago." That afternoon, Ben asked me, "Mommy, does Daddy hate you?" I pulled him into a hug. "Maybe, sweetie, but that's not as important as how much Mommy loves you." Anna chimed in. "I just need you and Ben." I held them both tight, feeling like I was holding my entire world. I knew this war had entered a new phase, no longer one of words, but of irreversible legal action. And I knew Leo wouldn't accept defeat easily. He would launch one final, desperate counterattack. After I filed the petition, a strange quiet descended. There were no more frantic calls, no more taunting text messages. Leo went silent, as if he had retreated. But I knew him too well. His silence wasn't surrender. It was him gathering momentum. One afternoon, as I was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. My mother-in-law got to it before I did, whispering, "Let me." Less than a minute later, I heard Leo's voice drift in low, but chillingly familiar. "Mom, I'm home." I froze, my heartbeat slowing as if bracing for a hurricane. I walked into the living room. Leo was standing there, thinner than before, his eyes dark and haunted, but a strange, unreadable smile played on his lips. "Ava," he said, looking at me. "I came to see Mom." My mother-in-law stood awkwardly between us. "Son, come in." I didn't stop him. I wanted to see his game. Dinner was suffocatingly quiet. Ben and Anna ate slowly, occasionally glancing at their father before looking down at their plates. Leo tried to act gentle, putting food on their plates, but his hands were shaking. "Ben," he said softly, "you've gotten taller." "Yes, sir," Ben replied politely. Anna said nothing, just clung to my arm. After dinner, Leo asked to speak with me alone on the porch. I agreed. He leaned against the railing, staring into the dark yard. "You know, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe I was wrong." I said nothing. "I don't want to hurt the children," he continued, his voice dropping, "but you're also pushing me out of their lives." I turned to face him. "You walked out 3 years ago," he sighed. "If I agree to sign the papers, if I stop fighting for custody, will you let me see them?" His question surprised me. This was the first time he had ever backed down. "What are the terms?" I asked. "I just want to see them periodically. Supervised is fine." He looked at me, his eyes a mix of pleading and calculation. "In return, I'll withdraw all the complaints." I knew this wasn't an awakening. It was a strategic move made from a position of weakness. "I'll have my lawyer discuss it," I said, refusing to negotiate directly. Leo gave a sad smile. "You're always so rational." "Because I can't afford to be wrong again," I replied. Just when I thought things might settle, I received a call from Mr. Davis 2 days later. "Ava, you need to prepare yourself. Leo just filed another motion." "What else could he possibly file?" I asked. "A petition for a court-ordered psychological evaluation of you." His voice was heavy. "He's claiming you've caused the children trauma and alienated them from him." My fists clenched. He was really going to drag them through this. "Mr. Davis has already filed a counter-request for an independent evaluation, but you should talk to the children first." That night, I sat down with Ben and Anna. No tears, no blame. "Soon, some nice doctors might ask you some questions," I said gently. "You just need to tell them how you feel." Ben looked at me for a long time. "Mommy, I don't hate Daddy, but I don't want to live with him." Anna whispered, "I'm scared when he yells." I pulled them into my arms. "That's all you need to say." On the day of the evaluation, I wasn't allowed in the room. I sat outside, my hands ice cold. My mother-in-law sat beside me, saying nothing, just silently holding my hand. When the door opened, Ben came out first. He wasn't crying. He just looked at me and nodded. The psychologist called me in and was very direct. The children show no signs of manipulation, but they do have a defensive reaction to their father, likely due to the significant trauma they experienced. I let out a long breath of relief. That afternoon, Leo called me, his voice hoarse. "You won." "No," I said. "The children just got to tell the truth." He let out a short, hollow laugh. "I'll sign the agreement." When the final agreement was signed in front of our lawyers, I looked at Leo. For the first time, he looked truly old. "I'll withdraw the petitions," he said. "And I'm sorry." I didn't reply. I just nodded. I came home late that night. Ben was asleep. Anna was asleep in my mother-in-law's arms. I stood watching them for a long time. I knew the legal battle was mostly over, but the wounds in my children's hearts would need time to heal. My mother-in-law came over, her voice thick with emotion. "Ava, I'm so sorry." "For what, Mom?" "For raising him, but failing to teach him." I hugged her. "You did the best you could." That night, I sat alone on the balcony. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of lightness. Not because I had won, but because I had protected what mattered most. But I also knew that with Leo, things were never really over. He might accept defeat on paper, but I doubted his heart had let go, and I had a feeling the next chapter would be his final, most unexpected attempt to hold on. After the agreement was signed, our house became unusually quiet. The phone didn't ring off the hook, the threatening texts stopped. Leo vanished from our lives, as if he had truly accepted his retreat. But I couldn't trust the peace. I had lived with Leo long enough to know he never knew when to quit. A week later, my mother-in-law fell ill. I was dropping the kids at school when a neighbor called. "Ava, your mother is having trouble breathing. I've called an ambulance." I spun the car around, my heart pounding. By the time I reached the hospital, she was already in the emergency room. Leo was standing in the hallway, his back against the wall, his face ashen. He saw me, and his eyes held a complex emotion, not anger, not defiance, but fear. "How's Mom?" he asked, his voice raw. "The doctors are with her now," I replied curtly. We stood near each other, less than a yard apart, but as distant as strangers. A while later, a doctor came out and said my mother-in-law had suffered a hypertensive crisis and needed close observation. Leo hung his head, his hands clenched. "It's my fault. If I hadn't caused all this trouble." I didn't respond. This time, I didn't need to say a word. I stayed at the hospital that night. Near dawn, I woke up to someone pulling a chair over. It was Leo. "Ava," he whispered, as if afraid of the noise. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I looked at him. His eyes were red and deeply shadowed. For the first time, I saw Leo as a son who was genuinely worried about his mother, not as a man plotting his next move. "Go ahead," I said. He was silent for a long time, then let out a heavy sigh. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm not fighting for the kids anymore. I just want, when Mom wakes up, please don't stop me from visiting her." I looked toward her room. "That's the doctor's decision, not mine." He nodded, then said unexpectedly, "I know nothing I do will ever make you trust me again." I didn't deny it. "But there's something," he hesitated, "I want to tell you, not to be forgiven, but to finally end it." I was slightly taken aback. "Tell me." 3 years ago," he said slowly, "I faked my death not just for the money. I wanted to escape the responsibility of being a husband and a father. I thought I was so smart. But seeing Mom lying in there, I realized there are some things you can never run from." His voice cracked on the last sentence. I listened, but my heart felt no great turmoil. Perhaps when you've been hurt enough, a confession no longer carries the weight you thought it would. The next morning, my mother-in-law woke up. The first thing she did was search for me with her eyes. "Ava," she whispered weakly. "I'm here, Mom." She squeezed my hand, then slowly turned to look at Leo, who was huddled at the foot of the bed. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was a bad mother. Leo fell to his knees. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Her hand trembled as she reached out to touch his head. "I don't need your apology. I just need you to stop making your wife and children suffer." Her words were like a final judgment. Leo bowed his head low. unable to answer. In the following days, Leo came to the hospital regularly, but kept his distance. He didn't try to approach the children or cause a scene. When Ben and Anna came to visit their grandmother, he just watched from afar. Once, Ben walked over to him on his own. "Daddy," he said calmly, "Grandma is sick. Please don't make her sad anymore." Leo froze, then nodded. "Okay, son. I promise." I didn't know how long that promise would last, but at least it came from his child, not from me. On the day my mother-in-law was discharged, she called me into her room alone. "Ava," she said, "I know you don't owe him anything, but if you ever decide to let him see the children, please, only do it when you feel it's completely safe." I held her hand. "I promise, Mom. Their safety will always come first." She smiled, her eyes softening. That evening, Leo called me. "Ava, I'm leaving." "Leaving where?" I asked. "Leaving this city." His voice was tired. "I don't want the kids to grow up always facing a father who scares them." I was silent. "I don't expect you to believe me," he continued. "I just hope you won't hate me anymore." I replied very slowly, "I don't hate you. I just don't have a place for you in our lives anymore." The other end of the line was silent for a long time. Then he whispered, "I understand." The call ended. I stood by the window, watching the city lights. I felt neither happy nor sad, just a light, empty feeling, like closing an old door for the last time. But I knew the story with Leo wasn't completely over. Some people leave, but their shadows remain, waiting for one final appearance. And I had a feeling the next chapter would be when all the truths were laid bare, with no turning back for anyone. From the day Leo said he was leaving, the house fell into a quiet so deep you could hear the clock ticking at night. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was like the calm after a storm, when the receding water reveals all the cracks at the bottom that everyone sees, but no one wants to touch. 3 days after she came home, my mother-in-law called me into her room. "Ava, sit down." I pulled a chair to her bedside. She was thinner, her hair grayer, but her eyes were startlingly clear. "I know what you're thinking," she said slowly. "You're afraid he's gone, but it's not over." I didn't deny it. "I'm just afraid he'll come back one day, in a worse way." She nodded. "I'm afraid too, but some things are more dangerous when they're hidden." She reached into her bedside table and pulled out a thick, yellowed envelope. "I've kept this for a long time. I was going to take it to my grave, but now I think you should have it." I took the envelope, my heart slowing. "What is it, Mom?" "Proof. Related to his faked death." She closed her eyes, her voice trembling. "I wasn't innocent, Ava." I opened the envelope. Inside were copies of wire transfers, old text messages, and a handwritten note from Leo, begging his mother to confirm he was missing to legitimize the official report. I looked up. "Mom!" Tears streamed down her face. I was wrong. At the time, I just thought as long as he was alive, that was all that mattered. I didn't think about how the consequences would fall on you and the children. I took her hand. "The fact that you're telling me this now is enough. But deep down, I knew this file wasn't just a confession. It was the final piece of the puzzle." That afternoon, Mr. Davis came over. I gave him the envelope. He studied it for a long time, then exhaled. "If you submit this, Ava," he said bluntly, "Leo will have no way back. He could face criminal charges." I looked out at the yard, where Ben was playing soccer with Anna. "I don't want them to have a father in prison." "But if you don't," Mr. Davis replied, "he can always come back, playing the victim." I barely slept that night. I sat by my children's beds, watching them breathe. I wondered, how much protection is enough, and at what point does mercy become self-destruction? The next morning, Leo appeared unexpectedly. No call, no warning. He was standing at the gate, a suitcase at his feet. His face was gaunt, but his eyes held a strange calm. "I came to say goodbye," he said when I opened the gate. "Goodbye?" "Yeah. I'm really leaving." I looked at the suitcase. "Where are you going?" "South," he said with a wry smile. "There's nothing left for me here." He looked deep into my eyes, as if searching for an unspoken answer. "Ava," he said, "are you holding on to something of mine?" My heart seized. "What are you talking about?" "The papers." His voice dropped. "Mom told me." I didn't deny it. "Yes." He closed his eyes and gave a sad laugh. I figured, "Are you here to ask for them back?" I asked. "No," he shook his head. "I'm here to tell you. Do what you think is right." For the first time, I saw no calculation in his eyes. "Aren't you scared?" "Of course I'm scared." His voice was raw. "But I'm tired. 3 years of running. I finally learned that the more you run, the more you lose." A long silence passed between us. "I just ask one thing," he continued. "If the kids ask about me someday, don't tell them I was a coward." I replied slowly, "I'll tell them you were a man who made a mistake, but had the courage to face it." He nodded. "That's enough." He picked up his suitcase and walked away without looking back. I stood there for a long time, until his figure disappeared down the street. Only then did I realize my hands were ice cold. That afternoon, I went with Mr. Davis to submit the final file. Not to destroy Leo, but to close every last loophole. The clerk who took the file looked at me and said quietly, "You're doing the right thing. Not for revenge, but so no one else gets hurt." When I got home, my mother-in-law was waiting. "He's gone?" She exhaled as if a great weight had been lifted. "Is it over?" I shook my head. "Almost, Mom." That night, Ben asked me, "Mommy, did Daddy go far away? Will he come back?" I stroked his hair. "Maybe, but no matter what, Mommy will always be here." He nodded, reassured, and went back to his room. Late that night, I stood on the balcony. The air was cool, the sky was clear. I knew the hardest part was over. The rest was no longer about fighting, but about healing. But I also understood that once the truth was on the record, the final consequence would come swiftly. When I received the summons from the investigators, I wasn't surprised. Holding the paper, I felt a weight in my heart, not of fear, but of knowing a cycle of karma was finally closing. My mother-in-law sat across from me, her fingers working a string of prayer beads. "It's time?" "Yes," I nodded. "They need to clarify the remaining details." She closed her eyes and sighed. "I don't blame you, Ava. I only regret that I wasn't stricter with him from the start." I took her hand. "You've been through enough. Let the law do the rest." The meeting was serious but not as intimidating as I'd imagined. I stated the facts and submitted the evidence. Mr. Davis was by my side, occasionally clarifying a legal point. When asked about Leo, I spoke very slowly. "I don't wish for a harsh punishment. I only wish for the truth to be officially recognized, so no one has to live in a web of lies again." The investigator nodded. "We understand. That is our goal as well." That afternoon I received a text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "I'm done here. I don't blame you." I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted it. Not out of hatred, but because I knew, from that moment on, we were on two completely different paths. A few weeks later, the official conclusion arrived. Leo's act of faking his death was confirmed. Because he had cooperated and partially confessed, he avoided severe criminal penalties, but all his rights and obligations were clearly re-established. Most importantly for me, my full custody and guardianship of Ben and Anna were upheld. That night I cooked a simple meal. Not a celebration, just a true family dinner after a very long time. My mother-in-law ate slowly, then put down her bowl. "Ava, thank you." "For what, Mom?" "Thank you for not letting hatred blind you." Her voice caught. "I'm old. All I want is for my grandchildren to grow up to be good people." Ben looked up from his plate. "We'll be good, Grandma." Anna nodded in agreement, her face smudged with food. I laughed, a warmth spreading through the house. One afternoon, while I was at the park with the children, Ben asked out of the blue, "Mommy, will I be like Daddy when I grow up?" I stopped and knelt down to his level. "You will be like whoever you choose to be, not like me, and not like him." He thought for a long time, then said, "Then I choose to be like you." Anna rushed in. "Me too." I hugged them both. In that moment, I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Occasionally, my mother-in-law would mention Leo. Not often, just in short sentences. He sent me some medicine. He asked how the kids are doing. I would listen without comment. I didn't forbid it, but I didn't encourage it. I let things be what they were. One rainy evening, I received a final call from Leo. "Ava." His voice was calm and steady. I'm going to be working farther away. It might be a long time. Okay, I said. I just wanted to say, I owe you. I paused. You don't owe me. You owe your children. He gave a soft laugh. Yeah, I know. The call ended there. No promises, no pleas. That night, I sat alone for a long time. I thought about the years that had passed, about the man who was once my world, and then became the storm that nearly swept everything away. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt a clear, certain peace. I had made it through. Life didn't give me a perfect husband, but it gave me 2 wonderful children and an invaluable lesson. Sometimes you have to lose something to find yourself. The next morning, I took Ben and Anna to school. Before running inside, Ben turned and hugged me. Mommy, you'll pick me up this afternoon, right? Of course. Anna kissed my cheek, smiling brightly. Don't worry, Mommy. I stood and watched them run through the school gates, my heart as light as a cloud. I didn't need a dramatic ending. All I needed was for each day to pass with me and my children living in truth, security, and peace. When the story ends, what remains is not about winning or losing, and certainly not about who was right or wrong. It's about the price of every choice we make. Leo chose to run, to fake his death for money and freedom, but in the end, he lost everything: his honor, his family's trust, and the right to be a father. And I, a woman who seemed gentle, was forced to stand tall to protect her children, learning to be clear-eyed, resolute, and responsible for my own choices. The greatest lesson here isn't about the law, but about cause and effect. Some mistakes, when you first make them, seem like shortcuts. But the farther you go down that path, the harder it is to turn back. If you shirk responsibility today, it will come knocking tomorrow in a far more painful way. No one can build a stable life on a foundation of lies. For parents, this story is a clear reminder. Children don't need perfect parents, but they need responsible ones. A parent who disappears, for any reason, leaves a deep wound that no amount of money can heal. And for women who might find themselves in a similar situation, please remember, kindness is not weakness, and tolerance does not mean letting others trample your boundaries. When you need to protect your children and yourself, you have the right to be strong, to say no, and to use the full power of the law and transparency to save your own life. Life doesn't always grant us a perfect family, but it always gives us the power to choose how we live, in fear or in truth. To live to please others, or to live so that your children will never have to bow their heads in shame for the things their parents did.